Hey, this is Meredith Elliott Powell, and you know what time it is. It is 1 o'clock Eastern and time for Thrive, the show where we dive into the strategies, discuss the steps, everything that you need to know to turn all of this uncertainty into your greatest competitive advantage. And today I have a guest who is probably going to talk about the mother load of uncertainty, and that is the workforce and talent. I have a thought leader when it comes to workforce talent engagement, Cara Silletto. Cara, welcome to the show.
Hello, hello. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, I am super excited. I have so many questions I want to talk about today. I'm going to hit the video and we will get going.
Okay.
All right, welcome back to Thrive. And today's topic, I think, is so important. I mean, Cara, I am really excited to talk to you because I got to tell you, of the one topic that is really confusing me right now, it is talent and talent engagement and the workforce in general. I mean, we just got the jobs report, and despite the fact that inflation is looming everywhere, there's more companies looking for jobs than ever before. But before we dive in, for those of you in the audience who don't know Cara, and there can't be that many of you, Cara, tell us a little bit about you and what does it really mean to be a thought leader in the area of workforce and talent engagement?
Sure. So I am out of the Louisville, Kentucky area, but I work with clients from coast to coast on figuring out why people are leaving and, more importantly, how to keep them longer. And I happen to be one of the oldest millennials. I was born in the 80s. So when I started my business 10 years ago, I was focused on bridging the generational gaps and reducing turnover through that message and those programs. But now we talk about everything from proper onboarding and that new hire experience to, of course, bridging generational gaps, making managers more effective in their roles. I'm still shocked at how many organizations do not have proper management training in place, as well as other things. Now we're including, compensation into the conversation and just the general culture. Have you created a place where people want to work? And as far as the thought leadership, instead of just saying the same things that everyone else is saying, and instead of giving generic strategies that blanket and sometimes work and sometimes don't, I speak from my experience growing up as a millennial, thinking very differently about that employer-employee relationship, and the fact that my mom was told things like, "You're lucky they let women work."
Yeah.
And instead she raised me to have a voice, to have a say, to have confidence in my skill set and value to the organization. And so now I share unique stories and examples, and of course data as well, about today's new workforce to help leaders keep from becoming disconnected from their front line, because we have to understand the mindset and the upbringing of those that we're recruiting and hiring if you want to keep them. They're not the same 25-year-olds that existed even 10 or 20 years ago as 25-year-old workers, for sure.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I'm the very last year of the boomers. I got more than a few years on you, and really watching the workforce shift and change, in that I think what is really interesting is that, in my opinion, employers are still looking to hire people for a job. And the biggest thing that I tell my clients is people can find a job. That's not what they're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Finding a job is easy.
Yeah.
I'm looking truly for something beyond that. And I realize that I'm controlling the workforce. Was this shift starting to happen before COVID, or did COVID bring it on, accelerate it? Kind of what's the history there?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the demographics, we had the huge baby boomer cohort. We had a much smaller Generation X cohort that came next. This was the latchkey kids, the figure it out on your own, sink or swim type of
Yeah.
group. And then you had this huge millennial generation. And so that's why even 10 years ago, I was talking about it's a new workforce. This is a different group of people, and it's going to take creating that place where they want to work, being heard, being valued, much more egalitarian approach, meaning just that not everybody has to be equal, but that everyone brings value. We need the frontline workers, mid-level managers, and the executives, or we can't operate the organization. So part of it comes from that demographic hourglass that we had. And then I would say that the pandemic for sure exacerbated or expedited all the trends that we were seeing. Same with the work from home, right? We were seeing that trend over the last 10 years, but then the pandemic just helped us get past some of the hurdles that were holding us back from more remote work. As one example, the same thing happened with the workforce. And of course, this year we hit the Great Resignation, which was just massive amounts of people quitting all at the same time for several reasons. But I think that had been in the works. I kind of tell people that we saw this coming. I wrote my book about workforce retention in 2018, Meredith. So this was an issue, and I had been speaking about it for years before even writing the book. Coming out of the recession from 2009, 10, 11, we saw it become harder and harder and harder to get and keep people. So I would say that this has been going on for years, if not more than a decade, but it has certainly been more focused on and more expedited just in these past 2 to 3 years.
Well, so where have people gone? I mean, has the gig economy played into this? At the end of the day, we still have to pay bills. We still have to save for retirement. We still have to do all those types of things. So where have people gone?
That's a great question. That's a big one. And some people have the misnomer that nobody wants to work. And that's just simply not true. We don't have a huge population out there that's not working or not clocking any hours, but it certainly has changed. Now, the pandemic took out, 2 to 3 million extra baby boomers who retired earlier than planned. It took out almost 3 million women from the workforce at the time when the schools shut down. However, we've regained most of that, of the women who wanted to come back into the workforce. It certainly gave women who wanted to stay home a path for that. So we didn't regain all of them. We have lost, hundreds of thousands of people who actually died of COVID. And for me personally, the 2 family members and close friends who passed away, they were still working. They were in their 60s and they were both working full time when they passed away. So we did lose that working population of some from the pandemic. And then we also saw one of the biggest impacts as well is we saw near zero legal workforce immigration in 2020 and 2021. And that is a huge problem for us because so many of our labor focused positions, right? Lower wage workers, for example, a lot of industries, manufacturing, construction, even some of my clients in healthcare that run senior care buildings and other things, hospitality, retail. I mean, we need a lot more laborers than what there even are in the US. So we can make assumptions and complaints about immigration policy and whatnot, but this is not political. It's simply a numbers game. We do not have enough legal workforce immigration happening right now to fill all the open positions that are needed. So that's just a few of those issues, but it's millions and millions and millions of people. To go back to your mention of the gig economy, that has been kind of a separate issue. How many people left the workforce or didn't join the workforce in the trends we had been seeing previously. And then there's the tethered. We call it tethered. Is your workforce tethered to a location and a shift? Like I have to be at the hospital from 7 to 7 or on the manufacturing line from 8 to 5 or whatnot. Or is your position untethered? And there's some spectrum to that. Some people are hybrid or in between or whatnot. But the amount of untethered work that has popped up in the last 10 years and even just the last 2 to 3 years is astronomical. So now you do have some folks that are saying, you know what? I don't want to be told where to be when. I don't want to be tethered anymore. And instead, if I can't find a fully remote job, I'm just going to piecemeal it together.
Yeah.
I'll work at, I'll DoorDash. Target came out with Target On Demand last year where you could pick your shifts and come in whenever you wanted. I mean, even big employers are implementing some of those things. And every year we get more, right? We had Uber, now we have Uber Eats. We've got
Yeah.
Grubhub, we've got Lyft, we've got all these things. And a friend of mine, well, one of my babysitters, her boyfriend is, I think, 29 years old. He quit his day job and now, no joke, this is not a joke, he full-time sells Pokemon cards
Yeah.
because he can. He's got access and he's got the internet and he's a smart kid and he's making really good money just creating an online Pokemon card shop.
Yeah.
So there's just more options today that didn't exist 10 to 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I was in Las Vegas working, and I caught an Uber, and the Uber driver had a tethered job, to use your lingo,
Yeah.
but he's making 20,000 a month driving an Uber in Vegas because Vegas is just so busy that he
Yes.
said, I really like the fact that I work if I feel like it. I don't have to work if I don't, and my own boss, kind of doing my own thing.
Right.
So in other words, there's a lot at play here,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah, it
So
is not one piece of the puzzle or one missing link. It's all these things have happened that created this perfect storm that we're in right now.
So where does an employer start, whether they're a small organization or a large organization? We have all the reasons out there and they're all valid reasons, but at the end of the day, I still need 3 people in my company. I still need 100 new workers in order to start a new product.
Right.
Obviously, you're competing for a much smaller pie of people. How do you make yourself competitive? How do you make yourself attractive? Where do you begin?
Sure. So I'll just put pay out there first things first, pay
Yeah.
as best you can, and make sure that your benefits are attractive. Not everybody wants a 401k. Not everybody even needs health insurance, depending on their marital status or if they're a veteran or other things.
Yeah.
So, really, first, kind of look at your comp and benefits. That's one piece of the puzzle. But outside of that, what I work with my clients on is auditing how great of a place are you to work? Are you magnetic? Are you attracting people and keeping them? Or is something repelling people from working for you? And so it depends on how sophisticated a company is on their culture journey, right? Everybody's in a different place. But first things first, look at the new hire experience. Some companies have a really great onboarding program that's robust and complex, and it includes not just compliance, but culture, and they have shadowing, and it's a lot of training. And other folks are just shoving their people out on the floor. They
Yeah.
fill out the papers and say, good luck, here's a shovel, or here's
Yeah.
your computer or whatnot. And so first thing is that new hire experience and the onboarding. A lot of companies just cut that over the years when they got busy, and they simply need to reinstate it or revamp what's going on with onboarding. The second piece is management development.
Mm.
So have you promoted or hired people into leadership positions without giving them the tools to be successful
Yeah.
in the role, right? You see this every day, I'm sure, Meredith.
Mhm.
So we have to have a proper and effective and updated, not something you did in the late 1900s, but an updated leadership and management program that meets the need of today's new workforce. So are you including the generational conversation and DEI and other things about inclusive leadership that your managers need to see? Because the managers have the most influence
Oh,
on whether
completely.
a person stays or goes, right?
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And if you think about all those other issues, right? The pay, the schedule, team conflict, other things that people get frustrated for and sometimes quit, a good manager can buffer almost any of that. Like, I
Yeah.
don't like my uniform, I quit, right? You can talk to folks about it, try to give more options or more understanding or compromise somewhere else, those types of things. So if the new hire experience is good, you'll keep your 30, 60, 90-day people a lot longer.
Yeah.
And then if your supervisors and managers are good, then they will keep everybody longer and not be repelling folks out of the organization, which I just unfortunately see all the time.
Yeah.
So those are some of the pieces, as well as there are fundamentals that are not happening right now. Good communication is not happening because everyone is so busy. Everyone is doing more with less, doing more with less, doing more with less. And so one of my key immediately actionable strategies that I teach, which seems so basic, but it's not happening, is communicate your expectations.
Yes.
Because your new hires, I don't care if she's 25 or 55, she cannot read your mind. And she doesn't know how it's always been done, or how this company is different than the last company, or what your definition of professionalism means, because that word is subjective.
Completely.
And, yeah. So if we communicate our expectations instead of just saying, I shouldn't have to tell her that. Well, that's just common sense. Who doesn't know that? That's a manager that's not going to be as effective at retaining folks than someone that says, I never thought about it the way that you're coming at this. So let's talk through that and figure out how we can get on the same page. And I didn't realize that you didn't know I want you to keep your shoes on at the office all day.
Right.
I mean, the littlest things, but that was something I got in trouble for in my 20s. I would walk around barefoot. I didn't think it was a big deal, Meredith.
Well, I mean, I think it's so funny. I was just with a client talking about this the other day, and they're really struggling with this next level of leaders. And what I said to them, I said, everybody comes to work every day with this long list of things to do. And it's your job description, and nobody can do their job description because the last line on every job description is anything else we ask you to do.
Yes, other duties as assigned, right?
Exactly. So, Cara, if I report to you, I'm coming in every day and I'm making a decision about what gets done and what doesn't get done.
Mm-hmm.
The chances that I'm going to prioritize exactly what you prioritize are slim to none. So if you don't tell me what your priorities are, you're going to get upset with me, but it's not really my fault. I'm doing the same thing that you did and decided that this is going to get done and this isn't going to get done. Now, let me ask you a question, something that's really curious to me. What about recruiting? Like, is this like what I see as a mistake right now? I think recruiting needs to be more like sales. Anybody who's highly successful, you're incredibly successful. You don't sit there and wait for the phone to ring. You have a sales team who goes out and finds the clients that you want. I think that recruiting has got to shift that way too. This whole idea of posting on Indeed, I feel like you're already behind the eight ball. Not that you shouldn't do it, but really good people have a job.
Right. Yeah. So a couple of things come to mind. In the sales world, I know years ago, I don't know if anybody still says this, but they would say ABC, right? Always be closing.
Yes.
And I tell people ABR, always be recruiting. So you're exactly right that needs to happen consistently. I do encourage companies, particularly those who have a lot of staff, right? And probably a lot of turnover, you have to hire ahead of your needs.
Yeah.
So whether it's on the manufacturing line or even one of my clients that is an engineering firm, they have, 50 engineers. Well, if they know at least 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 are going to leave every year, why are they not creating the pool of the incoming folks that are shadowing and interning or assistant engineer for projects? Because they know they're going to lose folks who get poached, or their spouse gets a job in a different city, or for whatever reason it is. Have that pipeline ready, and not just the pipeline of recruits, which is one level, but actually hire ahead of your needs and say, look, if we've got to get these projects done for the clients, then I'm probably going to need somebody, almost that succession plan, right? Somebody to take over a project in 6 months when my next lead engineer leaves, because they can see it coming. You all, this shouldn't blindside us. We know turnover is here. And my newest message right now is about operationalizing turnover, meaning if you don't offer a pension, which most people don't anymore, right? You don't have
nobody does.
That's keeping people. So if you don't offer a pension that's going to keep people there for the long haul, then why don't you just plan for some turnover. We can certainly reduce turnover from where it is now that's detrimental, but let's say we can take your 40% turnover down to 20%. Even 20% turnover is a lot and needs to have a well-oiled machine behind it.
Right.
So then you get the proper recruiting that includes the marketing and sales mindset, but you have a proper recruiting function in place. You have a better onboarding new hire experience. You have a cross-training plan and career development planning, and you have great managers in place with succession planning on that, great training in place for everybody. If we build this well-oiled machine, we can still be very profitable with a 20% turnover if we're dealing with a 40% now. Now, I have some clients who have 80% turnover right now, and they're in, industries that have very low wage workers. You can find a job within hours or go DoorDash for the same amount of money and things like that. So depending on whether you're at 80% trying to get it back below 50% or you're at 20% trying to get it back to 10, we're not going to eliminate turnover.
Yeah.
There's just too many options out there. Nor should you.
Yeah, I was going to say, you don't want to, right? I mean, there's always some people you want to get off your team every year.
Some turnover is good, which is why our slogan is reducing unnecessary employee turnover.
What are some of the biggest mistakes you're seeing organizations or leaders make right now as it relates to talent, whether it be engagement, retention? Where are we going wrong?
This is a tough one to say out loud, but I see a lot of companies holding on to ineffective managers that they need to let go because that person is repelling people. And that person is keeping the entire organization from becoming the place where people want to work. And then I get the pushback, well, but that person's dependable, or that person's the subject matter expert, or that person's the biggest producer, or that person, I've known them for 22 years and I know their kids and I can't possibly let them go, right? That type of thing. And yet that sometimes is the barrier from getting where we really need to be. So that's one of those. I think executives are finally starting to talk about culture and the cost and investment around culture, but we're still too far behind in most small to mid-size organizations, I would say. The big guys, they have a whole department, right? They have a vice president of people and culture. But if you're a small to mid-size business and you still call your HR functions HR generalists, HR managers, even an HR director, that sometimes tells me that you're not investing in the culture, that you still see HR as compliance and risk mitigation, keep me out of jail with the right paperwork, payroll and benefits. And they haven't taken that next step to create a department or a role, even chief HR officer or vice president of people, those types of positions that really focus on creating a better place to work.
Yeah, the most successful organizations that I see are the ones where they have elevated HR to the C-suite, truly elevated it to the C-suite. And the CEO technically thinks of themselves as head of HR. Like, it is not something that they work with intimately, the HR director. It's not something that they just pass to that person. Because that's how important people are. I mean,
it is. And none of us can do what we do without our people. So if you're managing behind spreadsheets and behind meetings and computers all the time, and you are not out there on the floor, getting to know your people, talking to your people, listening to your people, not just talking at them, but letting them talk to you, I agree. I think that's where we sometimes get that disconnect of the executives are making decisions and policies and schedules, not really understanding the folks. And then they wonder why they quit. Well, because it's a different workforce and they're not really listening to that. So yeah, absolutely. That HR situation or conversation has to be at the C-suite level.
Yeah. Well, it is hard to believe, but we had come to the end of the show, and I probably have about 30 more questions I want to ask you. So you have to agree to come back. I always close out with two, and you can answer them in any order. How do people find out more about you, find out more about all the work that you're doing in your incredible training organization? And then what's your best piece of advice for anybody looking to really crack the talent challenge in 2023? Where do they need to put their time, their energy, and their resources?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the only Cara Silletto on LinkedIn. So I'm easy to find. My organization is called Magnet Culture because, of course, we're trying to create a magnetic place where people want to come back tomorrow. And our website is wereduceturnover.com. So that's how you can find us. You can find my book, Staying Power, on Amazon, Kindle, and Audible, if you'd like to take a look at that. And the biggest piece of advice here. So I would definitely say that investing in the development of your managers. I mean, I know I've already said that a few
Yeah.
times, but that if there is a silver bullet, the investment of making your managers more effective in their roles, whether they're supervisors, manager, director, executives, even. I'm talking about senior level executives. If you have not trained each level of those folks to better understand today's new workforce and to get the skills they need to be a retention champion for the organization, that is absolutely where you will get the most bang for your buck on any retention initiative.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, it just is return on investment. I also say you get incredible competitive advantage
Yeah.
because most of your competitors are not doing that, right?
Exactly. And then recruiting becomes easy because your staff lines up their friends and neighbors to come work for you. That's what
Right.
happens for me. I don't have to post jobs because my staff has people. As soon as an opening comes up, I know somebody who wants that job.
Yeah, I know somebody who would be great. Well,
Yeah.
Kara, I cannot thank you enough for your time today, your wisdom, and all your great. This has been such an interesting conversation, and like I said, feel like we have barely scratched the surface. I really encourage you to follow Kara on LinkedIn. She has some amazing posts. Go out to Magnet Culture, read what she's developing and training. Check out her book. We'll have all of that in the show notes. And again, great piece of advice. Join us right back here next week, 1 o'clock Eastern, for another episode of Thrive, turning uncertainty into competitive advantage. Watch for this to be turned in the podcast. You can get the replay there. We'll see you next week.